Hi, praise the Lord. So glad you guys can join us here Friday night with friends as we go ahead and interview people that people we know, our friends, kind of like having coffee with someone as they kind of share their life experiences. I do want to make a quick announcement. Please do partner and share with us at newarkupc.info. If you do like us and share us with your friends and your circle of friends. And then, of course, we do have small groups. Make sure you are all staying plugged in with our small groups. If you have Zoom, you can join. So it's very, very straightforward. You can join from the comfort of your home or in your car or wherever you are. As long as you have internet, you can join a small group with us. My next guest that we have here is a good friend of mine, Kandra. And we actually met in St. Louis many moons ago. She was a barista, and as well as I, and we were both working with Jen Yoder. Some of you might be familiar with her mom, Sister Yoder, who used to live out here. But we work together. We're baristas, and so we're pretty big coffee connoisseurs now because of that. But the reason I actually had her come on is Kendra actually adopted a baby girl. I mean, a girl, and so our job is to I want to hear her experience and kind of ask questions about the whole adoption world, and she's very passionate about that. And I guess you could kind of pop on in here. Kendra can come on, pop on in here when you have a chance, and she'll kind of experience and share her heart about adoption. And so I'm going to go ahead and let her have her spotlight here, and we'll come back with questions. So if you have any questions, please be thinking of them. Kendra, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, many moons ago, Arash and I met. Some of my fondest memories are breakfast. We would call them early Saturday mornings. Coffee, espresso, coffee tastings, and chocolate brownies. And we would all stand around, drinking coffee and munching on brownies at like 6 o'clock in the morning and talk about whatever news was happening, at the latest time. First of all, thank you so much for asking me and inviting me to share my heart regarding adoption and to share this Friday night with friends with you guys. So here's my story. It actually started in St. Louis before I was married, before I lived in Florida. And I was given a health diagnosis that the doctors were pretty unsure if I would ever carry a biological child of my own. So fast forward a couple years, I knew that adoption was always going to be in the conversation or part of the journey. And I didn't really know how. I didn't really understand what all it would take. But just one of those things that was in the back of my mind, kind of a sure thing. So my husband and I, when we were dating, we were talking, and it has always been one of those, yeah, one day, someday, if God opens the door, or if God makes a way, or if God this, or if God that. And it was kind of one of those someday type situations. And I can't talk about our adoption journey without talking about our foster care journey, because we adopted our daughter from foster care through the foster care system here in Florida. So we had probably been married maybe a year and a half, and we began to talk about adoption and what that would look like for us. We were at a place where we wanted to start pursuing it and really get serious about taking the next step forward. So a lot of research, a lot of praying, a lot of waiting. And we talked about private adoption, or domestic adoption here within the United States. We talked about international adoption and going overseas. And the third option was adoption through foster care. And ironically enough, at the very beginning, we both said no to foster care. It was just too hard, too messy, too long. It was too unstable. Whatever excuse, I guess you could say, we used it, we said it. And so I actually remember vividly, we were driving back from a leadership conference from my husband was on the leadership team at our local church at the time. And we saw some billboard or something, and the conversation came up on that road trip. Well, what do you think about foster care? And my husband he said, yeah. He's like, well, I don't know if God makes a way. And so that kind of was the first shift in our discussion about foster care. And so again, during this time, we're now been married going on 2 years. It's been a while, and still talking about it back and forth. We're now heavily invested in that this is how we're going to grow our family, is through adoption. And one Sunday night, I saw him looking at this column in our church lobby, and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you just standing looking at this column in the lobby? Like, what is going on? So I happened to walk over and see why he was staring at the column, and on that column was a flyer for a local agency that was recruiting foster parents. And my heart jumped inside me, and I was like, oh, maybe this is the time that he's going to start saying yes, or this is the time. Things are shifting, that our conversation is changing. It's no longer a no to foster care. It's a maybe, let's see, let's get a little more information. So I mentioned to him, and I said, hey, I saw you reading the flyer for his house. What are your thoughts? What were you thinking? And he goes, yeah, I'd definitely be interested in more information. And so we kept talking about it, and I was like, well, that's a very drastic shift from no, it's too hard, too messy, too unstable, to yes, I want more information. So long story short, a lot of training, a lot of praying, a lot of waiting, more paperwork. We became foster parents in January of 2017. And that began our journey to adoption. So our first placement were two beautiful girls. The oldest one was with us for about a year. Her sister stayed with us just up until September of last year. And we were all in. We jumped in with both feet, and we were like, okay, if this is what God is leading us to do, then let's make our yes. And we had been praying, God, put us in a place where we could just say yes. And I mean, things from car seats and high chairs to clothes. We moved to a new apartment. We got a bigger car, just all of these huge God moments in our life. Our jobs became more accommodating to be more accommodating for foster care in regards to giving us time off for court hearings or new cases, whatever it was. Just doors just began to open all around us, everywhere we looked. And so we said, okay, God, here we are. Let's pursue this. So now through the foster care system, there's the whole process of reunification is always the main goal. And so we were great. We were strong advocates in having these girls be reunified, and it wasn't really looking like that. Their father was in jail in one state. Mother was in jail here in Florida, and it was just back and forth, back and forth. And finally, the youngest girl became legally free for adoption, and all of a sudden, we went through this really rocky patch as a couple, because I began to feel checks, and I was like, something is not saying yes. I feel these red flags, and I'm not sure what it is. And my husband, on the other hand, was like, yes, we need to do this. And so we were kind of warring against each other, and we began to pray about it and just really pursue God and try to figure out what was going on. And we did not adopt her. Meanwhile, in this war and struggle back and forth trying to figure out what was going on, we received a second placement of an 8-month little girl. I was about 6 months pregnant with my oldest biological child. And we began, there's 2 different divisions here in Florida, or in our county, of dependency court. One is called early childhood court, and the other is just regular dependency court, in which regular foster care cases go through. Early childhood court focuses on children, infants up to 3 years, and it is all voluntary. The biological parents have to volunteer and ask to be placed into early childhood court, as it is fast-tracked. This judge, there's one judge in our county that precedes over this, and she's known for 12 months or less. And we were just kind of blown away at the whole process of from start to finish. And again, with foster care, the goal is always reunification, and you're always striving to help families, to help heal families and help build the bridge, to be the village, I guess you could say, for these families that are going through really difficult times, whatever their circumstances are, just to kind of be that extra helping hand. And so we were pushing for reunification up until there was an incident with our little girl. Her name is Trini, and she was at a visit with her biological father, and an accident happened. She fell, ended up in the hospital, and next thing you know, the judge is saying, okay, we're no longer pursuing reunification. So we had gone from about 10 months of pushing and trying to help these biological parents succeed, and to be reunified with the baby, who was, she just turned a year old. And so meanwhile, I have a newborn, and we were not trying to have 2 babies 13 months apart. We were just wanting to be hands and to help this family along. And we went from, like I said, 10 months of nothing, of reunification, to very quickly, very suddenly turning to adoption. And it was very drastic, very fast. And here we are having my oldest, Trini, she's 3, my second child, Noelle, he's 2, and then we have a 6-month-old. And never did, in our journey of foster care, did we imagine that it would go from reunification to adoption so quickly, almost like night and day situations. And my husband and I, when we started foster care, we always said, you'll remember I said at the beginning, if God makes a way. And so it was really interesting, because if you read the scriptures, it talks about how we are adopted into it. And so it was so, for me as a mom, it was like I got to see the gospel lived out in my living room. And it just gave so much more clarity to certain scriptures that I hadn't really understood, or I hadn't really taken the time to process. And was it without its struggles? No, it was very hard. I stand back and I just am baffled. But on the other hand, I can't imagine not saying yes to this process, because it has completely changed the way we, as a couple, my husband and I, the way we process life, the way we communicate one with another, to the way we communicate and we um, conduct our business, our interactions at church. It, in every aspect of our life, it has completely changed us, and it shows. The scripture says that you read scriptures of where it says Jesus was moved with compassion before certain miracles happened. And I told my husband, I was like, never before did I really understand that. I said, but going through this whole foster care system, I was like, I have felt what I imagine that felt like, is because I have stood in courtrooms and I've listened to these awful situations, whether it's substance abuse, drug abuse, criminal activity, whatever. And I feel the compassion, and the only way that I can help is through this means of being a foster mom, or my husband calls it a middle mom. And that led us to our beautiful daughter, who has this squeaky little voice and doesn't know a stranger. And had we not been willing to make um, this hard decision of saying yes to foster care and going through the mess of foster care, we would have never been um, we would have never been given the opportunity to become her parents. And that I tell my husband all the time, I was like, I don't want to say no to this just because it's going to be hard. Any way that we look at parenting or parenthood, it's hard. It's so hard, especially in this day and age with COVID and all of the things that parents are hyper vigilant, have to be hyper vigilant about. It's hard, and so we looked at foster care, adopting through foster care, as one of those means that, yes, it's going to be hard, but why not say yes? When we were doing our foster care training, and we took so many classes on psychology and statistics and whatnot, the agency that we went through is faith-based, and they gave a statistic that to this day still rocks my world. So in the United States, there's approximately 445,000 children in the foster care system. Of that 445,000, 125,000 are legally free for adoption. So about a quarter of that number is waiting for their forever home. Now, there are approximately 400,000 churches, regardless of denomination or affiliation, in the United States alone. And it struck me because if one family from every third church would step forward and say yes, and make that hard decision and be the bridge between brokenness and healing, it would completely eradicate and dissolve the number of children that are waiting for their forever home. There would be no children, regardless of age or race, ethnicity, waiting for a family. And I keep coming back to, I want to do more, and I can't do more, but how can I do more? And so there's a saying: if you can't adopt, then foster, and if you can't foster, support, and if you can't support, volunteer, and if you can't volunteer, donate. And if you can't donate, then educate. And that's kind of where we're at right now, is in this process of, well, we've done the foster care, we've done the adopting, and now we're kind of in this in between space of our home is currently on pause right now. So we're not accepting any placements at this time. But we can still discuss, and we can still raise awareness about adoption. And especially in the church, it's such a burden for me. Like, I wish I had the time to share like all of the God moments that I had at doctor's offices and courtrooms and in the living room, going from screaming rage, things being thrown, to all of a sudden feeling the presence of God come into my house. And it's all part of that process of being willing to say yes. And I think if we as a corporate church body would forget our hangups, and we would forget about, oh, it's, behavior and age and ethnicity and excuse. If we would just be willing to say yes, I think we would really, really be blown away at how God uses our willingness to say yes. And it would just really open our eyes to how God takes something so insignificant and turns it into something beautiful. And I can't share a lot of details about my daughter's case, as we do have a very open relationship with her biological family. But it's not been easy. It's a work in progress, and it's at times very awkward. And I am reminded, my husband reminds me, that it's not about me. It's not about how I feel. It's about, number one, sharing the love of God with our daughter first and foremost, and showing her what the love of God looks like on a daily basis. And number two, it's showing our daughter and her biological family that just because circumstances led us to this point doesn't mean that they no longer love her, or they no longer have a right, or the honor of being called biological mom, biological dad. So that's something that we're still protecting for her sake, because it's her story to tell. And I can say that being in the middle of it, it's so beautiful to see the hand of God, to see the power of God just moving in different ways. And it all because my husband and I kind of shifted our thought process, and we just began to say yes. Okay, God, we didn't really want to do foster care, but we're saying yes. It might get messy, but here's our yes. And that's kind of our family life motto right now is yes. Just say yes. And God kind of fills in the blanks and gives you the grace to deal with um, the chaos and the crazies of foster care, and adoption, and everything that um, goes with that. So that's our story time. That's our process of how we got to become the honored title of Trini's mom and dad. And that's our adoption story in a very small, very, very small time frame.
There
And
I am. Hey, awesome. Hey, you said reunification a couple times.
yes. So that simply means the goal of foster care is reunification. And what that means is for families to be reunified. So for whatever circumstances, children have been removed from their family or from their parents, and they've been placed into the foster care system. And the goal is that at some point, the parents or family could complete a task list, of whatever. Maybe it's just stable housing, or maybe it's proof of income, or
Yes.
maybe it's you know, having clean drug screenings, whatever it is, whatever the case may be, is they have to complete those items before the children can be reunified at home or into their care.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, you said that a couple times, and I was like, so that's the purpose, is that ultimately is to reunify these
Yes,
families.
because these kids aren't my kids. Like, yes, they're my kids while they're in my home, but I'm not giving them back, because they're not my children to begin with. I want them to be with their parents, with their loved ones, whom they know, who they're comfortable with,
Yeah,
despite the circumstances. I want to be that helping hand, um, to kind of help people along the way.
awesome, awesome. A side note, I didn't mention this, but Kendra is an MK. She's a missionary's kid. So there's a lot
Yes.
of, and I do
Yes.
remember those Saturday mornings at 4 a.m.
Yes.
The reason we got that shift is a couple of Pentecostals had nothing going on a Friday night, so we ended up
Yes.
working the morning
Volunteered for
shift
the early Saturdays.
or the early Saturdays. Oh, too funny. But she is in Miami, Florida now. I just mentioning that
Yes.
she has moved to Miami, Florida. But what a great story. We do. So we are opening this up for questions, and I know we're getting a few here. Questions to talk about this system. And let's see. Looks like I have one here. Well, actually, Erica, did you want to go ahead and pull some questions up for us?
Yep, I can do that. This one says, when and how much do you recommend telling an adopted child about his or her biological parents? And do you anticipate any problems between your children because one of them is adopted?
So that's actually a really great question. So I'm going to answer the first part. Number one, it is a case by case situation. And for our family, safety is number one priority. Nothing is going to be shared with Trini if it's not for her betterment, or if it's not safe for her. That being said, Trini is 3 years old. She knows her biological mother's name. She knows her biological father's name. She knows that she is adopted. It's something that we have been very open with her from the very beginning. Simply because we didn't ever want there to be some point in her life where it's this big surprise, that she's finding out that she's adopted. She says, Mommy, do you remember when I was a baby in your belly? And I'm like, no, baby, that didn't happen. I'm your we call it heart mommy, because she grew in my heart, and we say that her biological mom is her belly mom because she grew in her belly. And we explain it in really simple, age appropriate terms. As far as anticipating any problems, no, and I say that very cautiously, because we have put safety measures in place with the biological family. We have a P.O. box that they can mail things to. If we mail things back, we use the P.O. box address. We have a Google Voice number that they can text or call. We send photos back and forth. So there are different things that we have put in place to keep Trini safe, but also to keep our family safe as well. Like, they know our first names, but they don't know our last name. So there are different ways that you can kind of sidestep those issues. And we have a very loose agreement that basically says if at any point we feel that things are unsafe for Trini, that will basically stop everything, because for us, her safety is paramount.
Yes. Awesome. Awesome.
This one says, how much notice do you get before you are expected to accept a foster child?
So that is a case-by-case situation. So with our first placement, I got a call on a Wednesday regarding this placement, regarding the placement of the two sisters, and we didn't actually pick them up from their location until like Friday or Saturday. So we had a few days to prepare, like mentally. And fortunately enough, they were within our age bracket that we were kind of already set up for that placement. Now, for Trini's case, when they called, it was like 5 hours maybe from the time they called me until I picked her up. They called me, they said, hey, we have this little girl. She's 9 months old, blah, 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 blah. Can you take her? Yes. I was like, let me call you right back. I called my husband. I gave him the details that I was just given. And he was like, well, yes, of course. And so 5 hours later, I actually went to, she had just been brought to the agency and I met them there. Like it was when they called me, she hadn't even been removed from the situation that she was coming from. So it really depends on a case-by-case situation.
Wow. 5 hours.
5 hours. My husband was at work.
Of course.
This question says, I have heard that the cost of adoption is a huge barrier for those who want to adopt. Can you give us any idea of the expense related to adopting through the foster care system?
I love this question. People ask me this question all the time, and it's like my favorite question to answer. So that is actually a really big myth, is that adoption through foster care is expensive. That is not true at all. With a little caveat there, pending county, state regulations. In the state of Florida, if your child is in foster care, most of the time, all you have to pay are court fees. And that is things like you have to pay for a birth certificate, you have to pay for the clerk fee, things like of that nature. You don't actually have to pay for the adoption attorney. You don't have to pay these extravagant amounts in regards to adoption from the foster care system. I think where people get this idea is from private adoption, or what's also known as domestic adoption within the United States, and that is more pricey. When you're looking at between $30,000 to $100,000 for the adoption, and it's not the same domestic adoption versus adoption through foster care.
What's the difference?
So private adoption would be a mom who has made an adoption plan for her unborn child and has gone to either an agency, or she's asked, say, a family friend, and they have gone to an adoption attorney, and now the prospective adoptive family is now covering medical expenses or covering legal fees, court fees, that type of thing, versus foster care. Children have been legally freed for adoption, meaning the parents' legal rights have been terminated, and now they're simply just waiting the adoption process.
Wow. Thank you for letting me know that.
What happens if children have biological siblings who get adopted into separate homes, and do they try to allow them to keep in touch?
So again, foster care is very much a case-by-case situation. Trini has biological siblings elsewhere, and at this point, it is not safe for her to be in communication with those siblings. So that is how we feel. As long as Trini's safe, then yes, we would make every attempt to keep that sibling relationship, that sibling bond intact. That's actually one of the main reasons we didn't adopt our other placement, is because she did have an older sibling, and it was not safe for that older sibling to be in our home and maintain contact. So we could not willingly say yes to one sibling, knowing that there was another sibling and the safety precautions that we felt we needed to keep in our home, and break that sibling bond. So we chose to say no. And this past September, they were reunified with a family member together, because sibling bond, family bond is so important.
Awesome. I'm assuming the kids, they do better with being with a sibling or a relative.
Absolutely, because it's somebody they know, they're familiar with, they have that level of trust. A big key in helping children heal from their trauma is attachment, and having that capability to attach and form relationships and form bonds with people. So why would we as foster parents or prospective adoptive parents want to cause more trauma in removing that sibling bond than keeping that very fragile attachment in place, and cultivating it and using that as a tool to help them heal from whatever their circumstances are.
Wow. Awesome.
Okay. Does the government give adopted foster kids any support? I'm sure it's a case by case, but do they ever?
So in the state of Florida, I don't know what, I can only speak for what's happening here in Florida, as that's what I'm familiar with. Within the state of Florida, any child that has been adopted through foster care can go to any state college tuition free. They have, they are covered up until 18, 21, I forget the exact age, with insurance, state funded insurance, college insurance. They are something else I'm forgetting. So nationally, there's the adoption tax credit, which is can be significant, depending on your tax bracket and financials and whatnot. So yes, there are ways that the government does assist and does make things a little bit easier if you're willing to do your research, dig out the facts, and deal with the red tape.
Wow, that's awesome. Florida does that. Yeah, I like that.
How did you mentally and emotionally prepare to extend love and care while pushing for reunification?
I read a quote that says, "I'm not afraid to grieve when these children are gone. I'm afraid of what will happen to these children if I don't." Meaning, I am, or we as adults are, or prospective adoptive parents or foster parents, we have the mental capacity to process emotions, to process trauma, and to process what we call in my house crazy brain. And these kids don't have all of those capabilities. So in my ability to process all of the awfulness, I'm teaching these kids, and I'm showing them that it's okay to have to show love and to extend care, whatever the outcome may be. Now, Did it hurt when our oldest placement left? I bawled like a baby. I locked myself in the bathroom and bawled and sobbed. And my husband's like, "What's wrong?" I was like, "Did you not hear what she just said?" Like, it ripped me apart. I was a train wreck for days. But that's supposed to happen. Because if it didn't hurt, if it wasn't that raw and emotional and grievous for you, then you're not doing it right. In my opinion, you're not giving yourself. And why would I hold myself back to a child that has just walked through hell on earth with her experiences and things that no 5-year-old should ever have to deal with? Why would I hold myself back? So for us, it was arms wide open, heart wide open. Baby, how can we help you? How can we help you process? How can we help you learn to trust again, learn to love again? So it was hard. I mean, you're saying yes to a stranger. It doesn't matter that they're 5. You're saying yes to this stranger. Come on in. Come live with me. And you don't know anything about them. You know nothing about their background except the awful parts. You don't know any of their good parts. You don't know any of their good memories. You just get a cold, hard list of all the things that have gone wrong in their life. So it's awkward. You're getting to know someone and you're trying to process your own emotions while navigating their own emotions through this whole traumatic experience that they've just been dealt with.
Wow. Amazing.
We have a follow-up question. Whoop, that's not the one. What if 2 children are up for adoption at the same time? Would that be different with allowing them to keep in touch if they are in separated foster homes?
So, 2 children meaning siblings, possibly is where this is coming from, and they're in separate foster homes. So, typically what would happen is if a lot of times there are siblings, but they're half siblings. So they may have the same dad, but different moms. Most times they will try to place siblings in one home, especially when adoption is being discussed, at least in my county, in my state. Now, if it is coming to the fact that they have to separate, say, for example, dad of one sibling, his brother is adopting one baby, and then a non-relative foster family is adopting the other baby. That is entirely up to the foster parents and the adoptive parents on what they come to terms with. Not every case in that goes to adoption through the foster care system is an open adoption, meaning not every case is going to have that communication with biological family members. It's entirely dependent on the prospective adoptive family and how willing they are to bridge that gap and to allow that communication to stay open. I hope that answered that question.
Yes, it did.
Did you set a cap on what age of children you would accept?
Yes.
If so, what was your thought process?
So for my husband and I, we had, there's a bit of an age gap between my husband and I. He is 10 and a half. I jokingly tell him 11 years older than I am. And we had no biological children of our own. So when we started this, I was 25, 26, something like that. And so we said, we kind of based it off of how comfortable we would feel. Like, I'm 25, it would be a little weird if I had a 15-year-old and tried to be mom to a 15-year-old, So our age bracket was newborn to 5 years old. Boy, girl, didn't matter. Ethnicity, race, didn't matter. we're a mixed race family ourselves. So it wasn't age basically was our one parameter that we had, and that was newborn to 5. And we just went from there. And we said no. We got calls. They're like, oh, could you take a 9 and a 7-year-old? And I'm like, I would love to, but I am not set up for a 9 and 7-year-old. I've got a twin bed and a crib. So I am unable to take a 9 and 7-year-old.
In regard to your statistics, do you know the age breakdown of that or no? I know you said 125,000 are ready for adoption.
I have it right here. So I can pull it up for you because I was reading these, and these statistics are came out in June of 2020, but they're for the fiscal year of 2019. So they're a little bit behind, like all things foster care. Yeah. But if bear with me just a second, and I will get that exact number for you. Shockingly enough, I will share this while I'm searching for that. It's a big misconception, foster care, that African American children are like the highest percentage of children in foster care, and that is wholeheartedly not true. It's a big misconception that Hispanic children of whatever background are the leading number, highest number in foster care, and that is untrue. The highest percentage of children in foster care in regards to ethnicity is white and Caucasian children. It's like 47% of the children in foster care are actually white children. So
interesting.
It's just mind-boggling. I was reading these statistics today, and I was talking to my husband. I was like, "Did you know this?" It's like, "How come you didn't know that?" And he was like, "No, wow." Like even as foster parents, it shocks us because it's easy to have these preconceived ideas and to have these notions of what you think foster care is. Now, don't get me wrong. Like if you talk to my husband, he is highly fed up with the foster care system. With the children, you asked Arash the age of children waiting to be adopted. The highest percentage, so again, this is of September of 2019, okay? The highest percentage is children 1 year. So it kind of breaks it down. Of that number, there's like, they're in pre-adoptive homes, 13%. So like 15,900 roughly are in pre-adoptive homes.
So the age range is 1 to 2-year-old, or
the highest percentage? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. What is the highest percentage when it comes to age? Are these teenagers?
Are you referring to actively legally freed for adoption? Or are you just saying in the foster care system as a whole?
I guess we could do as a whole, whatever's easier. I was curious about what that age number was.
The highest percentage, believe it or not, is actually 1 to 2 years old.
1 to 2 years old.
Yeah. And then it kind of dwindles down to between 6 and 13, 14, and then it jumps back up between 15 and 17. Because unless you are emancipated or you age out, you're in foster care. Unless you're adopted, you're emancipated from your parents, or unfortunately you age out, you're in the foster care system until you are considered a legal adult within the United States.
Wow. I mean, my misconception was foster care, everybody's 15 or 14. I didn't think they were 1 to 2.
Yeah. So. Trini was 8 months old, 8.5 months old when she entered into foster care.
That is interesting. Okay. Well, that's eye-opening for me. Thank you for letting me know that.
We have a few more questions. I've heard before that teenager children tend to be not adopted as easily as or quickly as younger children and babies. Is this something you have seen, and are these real hurdles?
So I would say yes. And I use that very carefully because the terms quickly, unfortunately, there's nothing quick in the foster care system ever. And the reason being is, in my opinion, let me be very clear on that. In my opinion, people are afraid of the hard things.
Yeah.
And people are afraid of teenagers have their own life experiences. They have their own thought processes. They have their own, they have missed out. A lot of them have missed out on childhood. And now they've had to be, in the foster care world, it's called parentified, meaning they've had to be the parent to younger siblings. And so they've not had this opportunity to be a child, to learn how to trust like a child. And so they get placed into these situations or in foster homes where the foster parents want to have, they have these teenagers and they want their teenagers to have childlike mentality, and that doesn't work. When you come into when you're dealing with teenagers in the foster care, you almost have to treat them like they're an adult. That they have, that their opinion and their thought process matters, and they have a voice. And despite the, like I said, in my house we call it crazy brain. Despite the way that they process or show emotion, or they're dealing with the trauma, however that may come out, that they still matter. And unfortunately, it's messy and it's hard, and not a lot of people are wanting to put forth that effort or to deal with the hard places of foster care, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Are you able to stay in contact with those you've fostered once they have been placed elsewhere?
We have tried. For us, we have not been successful in that. For some of our friends that are in foster care, they have, like once a month visits or emails, texting back and forth. I had a friend of mine that said they babysit the kiddos like once a month type situation. So it's a case by case situation. Unfortunately, the family members that our girls were reunified with, they chose not to, and so we had to respect that and kind of bow out gracefully and fade out of their lives. And we tried to make that transition as smooth and seamless as possible on our end.
Wow.
I actually have a question. Since I told you earlier that my husband and I are actually foster parents too. Do you have like an album of all the placements you've got? Like put pictures of them in? Like
So
of all the
yes,
placements you've got in your
actually
house?
we do. So we did two different ways. So we created a shared album on our phones. So all of the photos that we took with our first placement, whatever photo, it didn't matter who was in it as far as our family. If they were in that photo, they got it in their shared album. So we shared it with our whole family because for however long they were part of our family. And then the other way that we did it was we created photo albums of memories, key moments on Shutterfly, and we printed it out and we made copies and we sent it with them. And we also have a copy. So
that's a cute idea.
Our oldest daughter, our oldest placement, she had one album, and ours, the younger of the two, she actually had two because she was with us for like 3.5 years before she was reunified. So it was kind of a very lengthy placement.
Three and a
And
half
3.5
years.
years. Usually, I figured that after 18 months, they try to.
Yes. So
Man.
unfortunately, she was 18 months when she came into our care. We were their first placement. And she had just turned 5 before she left. And this is one of the drawbacks of foster care is it was a lot of back and forth situations because we were dealing with a biological parent that was out of state. And so when you're dealing with the foster care system from different states, unfortunately, it gets very twisted and it's like a tangled ball of yarn that is just back and forth, back and forth. And that unfortunately made her case so long.
No. No, I know there is. I've heard there's these are my assumptions, and please correct my assumptions. But when it comes to undocumented children, is the foster care, have they stepped up with that as well?
I want to be really careful in how I answer this because I'm not 100% sure. So I do know that DCFS, or it's called differently in each state. For Florida, it's called Department of Children and Family Services. They have stepped in. And actually, the agency that we went through is actually predominantly deals with unaccompanied minor children from Latin America.
Wow.
That come up, however they make it their way into Florida. They deal with a lot of that, as well as the local foster care scene here. So yes, foster care is aware. They are kind of boots on the ground situation. How that works out, I don't know. And I couldn't give you an answer into that side of foster care.
Yeah. I'm glad that there's support. That's good.
I have a couple questions left. What can a church or individuals within a church do to help foster parents in the congregation?
Great question. And I wish more people would answer this. So there are different ways. You can think of it as like a mom with bringing home an infant from the hospital, like a biological child from the hospital. Okay. So that first day of placement, we've probably spent hours in an office building with a crying child. So dinner would be a great idea. Like it's practical and it's comical, but nobody thinks about it. They're like, oh, you're a foster parent. You're a child. Like, here's a child. Have fun. So dinners would be a great idea. Babysitters, like my husband and I were at every single court date for Trini, every single one. So thank God I had one of our assistant pastor's wives. She took my son, Noelle, and she knew that it could be an hour. It could be 4 hours. It could be 6 hours. Who knew? But she would take him and she would watch him for that. And that was so helpful. Provide parents' night out. Get CPR certified. Get background checks so you're legally can care for these children. That was such a struggle for my husband and I. Is we didn't have a support group that could say, or a support system that we could go out. Like, we couldn't just leave our placements with anybody, Thankfully, within the state of Florida, there is a legal clause called Prudent Parenting. And that's basically, in layman's terms, if we felt comfortable enough with a neighbor or family member to send our own biological child, we could send that placement. But there's a caveat. You only get a time frame. I think it's like 6 hours or 24 hours. So Meals are a great way. Family, people in my church, now be careful with this. People in my church would say, oh, I have these clothes. Do you need them? And at first, I had these two kids that literally had 2 backpacks and that was it. And I was like, yes, I need clothes. I don't have any clothes for a 5-year-old. Like, I don't have any clothes for any children, period. But then as people kind of saw that we were foster parents, I became the local Goodwill drop off. And I was like, stop with the clothes, please. Like, I do not need clothes. Thank you. Thank you for your heart and your compassion, but no more clothes. Now, on the other hand, I had this wonderful lady in our church. She was an elderly lady, and she came to me and she's like, how old are the girls and what size do they wear? And I was like, kind of in my mind, I'm thinking, oh God, here we go. More clothes. And she called me and she's like, hey, I have something for you, but I don't want to give it to you at church. Can you meet me at the CVS down the street? And I was like, sure. And I pull up and she pops her trunk. And I kid you not, God is my witness. This lady pulls out bags of brand new with tags clothing for each girl. She probably spent like $500 on new clothes and just gave it to me and said, I wanted to be a blessing. Number one, I was so moved that she would do that. I didn't know this lady. Like, I come from a pretty large church. I didn't know her name at the time, but she has been since then one of the most staunch supporters of us. Hey, I'm praying for you. Everybody needs more prayers. Yes, pray for us, but let's be more than just words. Let's be hands. Okay. So meals, babysitters, get CPR certified and say, hey, I'm CPR certified. Here's my background check. Can I take the kids for an evening? But there's so many different ways that if you are a parent, think of how or what you would love for someone to support you with, and then turn around and do that. Does that make sense? Like if
that's great.
Everybody sends used clothing and blankets. And let me tell you the two things that foster parents don't need: used clothing and blankets. We've got plenty. I've got plenty. I don't need another blanket. I don't need another stuffed animal in my house. I don't need more used clothing. What I practically need is someone to take the kids for a couple hours so my husband and I can have a date night. What I need is for someone to go get formula. They told me when Trini came into care, they told me she was 9 months old. Okay. So I pick her up and come to find out she's 8.5 months old, which you wouldn't think that that's a big difference. But what they didn't tell me is I had an 8.5-month-old who weighed 14 pounds. She wore 3-month clothing and I had nothing. And so it would have been so great if I could have called somebody and said, hey, can I cash app you X amount of dollars? Can you go to Walmart for me? I need formula. I need 3-month clothing and I need diapers.
Yeah.
So it's less talking about, oh, I'm here to help you. And it's more hands-on, practical. Hey, do you need diapers? Like, can I drop dinner off for you tonight? It's not glamorous, but foster care is not glamorous.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, Kandra, so much. We are at the top of the hour. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for opening up our eyes. I had no idea. Some of your statistics are incredibly alarming. And thank you for telling us some practical things to do. One cool thing that our church does is anybody who works with children and youth is they all had their background checks.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're really value children, and so that's cool that we're ahead of the curve here. But before we send you off, there's one last question. They want to know how you prepare your coffee since you worked at Starbucks, which is a very important question. I feel that has to be
how I prepare, how I drink my coffee right now.
How do you drink your coffee now? I'm sure you have 3 under 3. So how do you drink your coffee now? Out of curiosity,
I'm straight up. Give it to me black. I drink black iced coffee. I'm not that. I'm not that. Or espresso. Give me double espresso, and I'm good to go.
That's the right answer I was looking for. Oh, that is too funny. Too funny. All right. Well, I drink mine with lots of creamer. So there you go.
Yes, I do remember that.
Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Well, thank you so much, Kandra, for joining us and sharing your heart with us. And thank you to everybody tonight for joining us tonight. Please do like and share us with your family and friends. And also do partner with us in giving. Go to newarkupc.info if you want to get more information. We are going to have service again. We do these nightly at 7 p.m. So hope to see you folks online tomorrow. And you guys have a wonderful Friday night. Good night, guys.
Bye. Thank you.